Welcome to the Harmonious Family Life. How to create deep connections, transform your family, and live with confidence and grace. My name is Ulrika Bilby, and my mission is to transform families and to help them creating a more harmonious life where we all can thrive individually and together, using our strengths and unique skills. And today, I will be speaking to Elizabeth Sautter, and we will be talking about a lot of interesting topics today. Something that she will call WISE. Elizabeth is a speech and language pathologist, an author, and the founder of Make Learning Stick, which provides training and resources to help build skills and practical tools for social, emotional, and executive functional skills. Welcome today, Elizabeth.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it was so nice that you could make it and to actually speak to me today on this very interesting topic. I think it's amazing work that you're doing. So before we dive into this topic of WISE today, and you will have to tell us a little bit more about this, why don't you just tell me a little bit about you and why you do the things that you do?
Yeah, so I am a speech and language pathologist by trade. I've been in the field for over 20 years, 25 years now, plus. But this has been more of a life endeavor for me. I grew up with a sister who's developmentally delayed. She was in special education all the way through her schooling. She's 2 years older than I am. And I have a cousin who has a son with autism, and I was very involved in his diagnosis and support. He's graduated from high school now and doing really well. And my sister's doing really well too. She has a job and she's in a relationship and she's driving. And then I also have two boys. I have two teenage sons with challenges in these areas, some anxiety and ADHD and whatnot. Um, and so it's really been a passion for me to support parents in the work that I have done as a speech pathologist or do as a speech pathologist. And my area of expertise and passion in the field of speech and language is communication, particularly social communication, which bridges into social emotional learning. And I ran a center for many years. We ran a lot of social groups and multidisciplinary team with occupational therapists and educational therapists and speech therapists, and really had the privilege of working with parents because they would bring their kids after school, and the waiting room was like a little support group, and we would do trainings with parents every session because this work really cannot be left on the shoulders of the kids. The parents need this support too, and they are a child's number one social emotional coach. And so, there's no guidebook, there's no handbook for parenting, period. But when you have a child with additional needs, complex needs, there's definitely more support that's needed. And I know that firsthand being a parent, but I also know that from working for the many, many parents that I've worked with over the years. So that's been my area of focus.
Oh, so important because communication is so important and it's very difficult. And it's a lot of hidden messages in communication as well. And that's also, I know, where you do a lot of work. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so within the world of social communication, there's, all kinds, it's very vast and complex. And in every situation that you go into, there's these hidden social rules. Maybe you call them expectations. We sometimes call them the hidden rules, the social rules, whatnot. And some people pick up on them innately. You just go in there and you figure out what's happening and all the people and the space and the time and what you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to do, what you're supposed to say, or what you can to be able to meet your goals and keep people around you feeling comfortable. And sometimes it's a little bit unclear, especially if your brain is wired a little bit differently to maybe be impulsive or to not be clued in to those nuances around you. And we call this situational awareness. And so We do a lot of work in this area in terms of bringing awareness to the people and to the thoughts of others and to the situation, to the context, in order to figure out how to navigate through it.
Mm,
So I've done some work with that in my book, actually, in at the bottom of each of the scenarios. It's context-based, my book, primarily for this reason, so that we can help our kids navigate in these situations, but also help parents have an example of what this would look like to support their kids in these ways.
mm,
And so I have like the hidden social rules down at the bottom of each page on the different contexts that you are in with your kids, like in the car and at the movie theater and the coffee shop or at the dinner table. All these places have these hidden social rules that we can
mm,
help our kids become more aware of. And really what it is it's social emotional learning is so abstract. We're trying to make it more concrete,
mm,
and we're trying to make the um, implicit more explicit. So really talking about it and processing it and making it more um, easily understood for children
mm,
and people who might have a harder time picking up on those nuances
mm.
themselves.
And then helping the parent then understanding how the child might perceive it and what you then can help them with.
Exactly. And
Mm,
what we're trying to do too is set up an environment that makes it's more predictable. And we know that social is never predictable because you can't control the people or sometimes the situation around you. And so just helping to make things more systemized and predictable, and then also priming them. What priming them means, preparing them for what's
mm,
coming ahead. So that's a little bit of what, talking about those hidden rules before you get to a certain place, or potentially you're leaving somewhere and you talk about like, oh, that was a fun event. And I really loved how you took turns in the game. And, how did you think it went when you're blowing out the candles? And then maybe say that they
mm.
actually blew out the candles instead of the birthday person. You could do a little social autopsy and repair work on maybe how you could do it again the next
Yeah.
time. And how do you think the person felt when you blew out their candles on their birthday cake? How would you feel if it was your birthday cake and your
Mm.
birthday party? So things like that are just really essential for teaching and learning social skills.
Yeah, making them aware instead of just being angry.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. And frustrated, but realizing that these are lagging skills that a lot of our kids have, and it's all developmental in nature. And if we are aware of these, all of the vast and complex skills that are involved with social competence and emotional intelligence, then we can figure out, oh, my child is kind of struggling in that area, and lean in with
Mm.
curiosity and support to be able to help them grow.
Mm. Yeah, so interesting and important. Um, Going into a little bit about whys, I'm so curious. Why don't you tell me what the letters in whys mean and tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And so wise is like, being a wise owl. So I have my little handy prop here, and we all need one of these, right? To remind
Yeah.
us we can be a wise owl and with our kids, but also don't forget that our kids can often be the ones that teach us lessons too, right?
Mm.
But like I mentioned, there's no guidebook or handbook for social and emotional learning. And so, and there's not that much support out there. There's a lot more now that the research is showing how important this is. So that's great. But I partnered up with a school psychologist and executive function expert, Rebecca Brandstetter, to develop an online course for parents. And I have also just released a second edition of my book, Make Social and Emotional Learning Stick, and 2 card decks as well for parents to
Mm.
be able to have at the ready to use as support. But within these 2 resources, the book and the course, we developed a model to help parents really understand that there's a bottom-up approach to this. So oftentimes, as parents, and I'm one of them too, just I want that magic bullet, like, give me the strategy that's going to work. And
Yes.
I was a strategy queen with my two boys for many years, and they were receptive to it in their early years. But then they started hitting adolescence, preteen and teens, tweens and teens, and they started, giving me the hand. And, I felt like a strategy saleswoman where they were slamming the door in my face. I even remember one time they were trying to slam the door in my face, and I was like peeking in, like, but research says, like that they care about that.
Didn't
And
work.
so it doesn't work. So really what we need to think about is that there's a bottom-up approach to this, and it doesn't start with the strategies. And my book is filled with tons, over 200 strategies. And so is our course, but it really is a pathway and a process to get there. And so the WISE model emphasizes that. So the WISE stands for wisdom, knowing what's going on with your child, and where they might need a little extra support, and focusing on their strengths to support their areas of challenges. Then there's the I for intentionality, and this is just the thought about being a conscious parent. So, and anybody who's listening today is a conscious parent. So you don't need to worry about that. You're here, you're invested, you're not just putting your head in the sand and saying, this will just go away and they'll grow out of it. I was just like that, whatever it might be. Every child and person is unique, but sometimes they need a little extra support in different ways. And there's a lot of things that we can do as parents, as you've learned on this summit, I'm sure. So that's just the intentionality piece, which I'm not concerned all of you have that just by being here today. The S is for self-care and compassion. So we really can't be giving to our kids in the way that we want to and showing up with intentionality and wisdom if we're not filling our own cups. You can't pour in the cups around you if you have an empty water pitcher. And so that's just the focusing on yourself, and we can go on walks, we can garden, we can read, we can dance, whatever it might be, bubble bath. But if you are sitting and walking in the bubble bath, whatever it might be doing, and beating yourself up with negative self-talk, then that defeats the purpose. So we want to be thinking about self-compassion as well, which is really just treating yourself like your own best friend. So, coming home from the end of the day and somebody says, I've had a hard day, you wouldn't say like, well, what did you do wrong? And you're, of course, I'm sure you said this and that. And how we kind of do that negative self-talk with ourselves. We would never say that to a best friend. So thinking about that and reframing the ways that we're talking to ourselves in our own minds and treating ourselves is the self-care and self-compassion that we're talking about. We follow the work of Kristen Neff, who's an amazing leader in this area of self-compassion. And then comes the everyday strategies, which is the E for WISE. So you can think about these as a bottom-up approach, and then there's so many strategies that you can use with setting up your environment, with the words that you say to your child, with using visual supports and schedules and all different kinds of things to help them feel more comfortable and to learn and grow with social emotional learning. And you can do this with everyday strategies. And that is why we've really made it fine-tuned to be something that parents don't feel overwhelmed by, because this can feel super overwhelming. So what we want to do is show parents how they can do this during their natural routines and activities, not as an add on to your busy schedule, but more as an add in to when you're at the dinner table, when you're cooking, when you're reading books together, or maybe watching a show, or in the car, or out, at a coffee shop if you're out and about these days. And so there's so many things that you can do. We call them teachable moments that you can embrace when you're with your child in these daily activities.
Could you give us one example from your book, for example?
Yes.
Because yes, that would be great.
Absolutely. Why don't you give me a situation that you like to do with your kids a lot? Do you like to watch shows together, read, cook together, dinner table? Do you guys have dinner together every night? And I can give you some examples.
Cooking with our children. Well, we used to like to do that, and now also, as my children are moving up to teens, it's more that I find that they're moving away from the kitchen and from the connection, and that it actually is more, it's a new skill that you have to find. How do I connect with my children now?
Yes, for sure.
Mm,
So there's a couple of things. There's so much to do in the kitchen, at the dinner table and whatnot. And we really try to make, dinner time a coveted time to spend time together, and to be able to have, everybody have their designated things that they do. And maybe that rotates, whether somebody is setting the table or clearing the table or whatever it might be. And that's executive functioning right there, the
yes.
chores. So right there, I can just say that, which I think people probably know already. But one of the things we do and we recommend is having a family meeting once a week, whether it could be in the car. It doesn't have to be a structured, because I know with the teens, this happened in my household too. They start, giving you the hand again. Like, I'm not going to sit down with you and go over this, but you can start planning out in a family meeting, talking about one thing that you appreciate about each other, one thing you're grateful for, and then you can do any problem solving and potentially planning the meals out and who's going to do what. In our household, we have Mondays are Mios, which stands for make it your own self. Just so that and they actually love it because they can make their mac and cheese and their quesadilla or whatever it is. But we still come together. So that's a little bit of systemizing, which is maybe you have Fold Fridays or Taco Tuesdays, whatever it might be. It creates that, it's the decision fatigue that's taken away. So having that schedule and things that, you could do as a family and have that collaborative, we call it collaborative problem solving and solutions. That's Ross Green's approach, to have as a family to be able to systemize the meals together. And then also just thinking about potentially cooking together. There's so much executive functioning involved with cooking. You have to plan ahead to make sure you have the ingredients. Maybe you have one of those cookbooks where you have the visual of what you want it to look like.
Yes.
So that's the end in mind. You have a visual of like what this fried chicken would look like. And then maybe it doesn't always look like that in the end, but you can map it out to, this is what it should look like. That's the executive functioning. I'm trying to get it to look like this. What do I need to do to get ready for this, which is the ingredients? And then do, which is the doing it, the mixing it, the steps involved, and then the done needs to match the picture. And that's actually a strategy from Sarah Ward and Kristen Jacobson, who are a contributor to our course and our book, because they're experts in executive functioning. Another thing too, that I always say for social learning, there's a lot of executive functioning and emotional regulation that we can talk about, but for social learning, just helping your child become aware of the situation without telling them. So having them make guesses and asking questions to help them make those guesses. So if they come into the kitchen and say, what's for dinner, say they're not helping that day and they're asking because they're hungry, instead of saying spaghetti and meatballs, you can say, I don't know, look around. What do you see? What do you smell? Use your senses to make a guess. And that right there, you would never think this, but that's social learning, because they are becoming aware of what's going on around them. And that is so much of what's happening in social learning when they're when they're engaging with other people, is becoming mindfully aware of what's going on around them. So even just taking situations like that and just asking questions versus telling them. And then there's so many rituals. Yeah, there's so many rituals that you can do at the dinner table in terms of like talking about your highs and lows of the day. You can have a talking stick to make sure that each person gets a spotlight for being able to share about their day. You can build a tower for, asking questions with the little Jenga sticks, asking questions and making comments to have a back and forth conversation and turn taking.
Could you tell us a little bit more about that? I like to hear more about that, the stacking. So what you do, you put a Jenga down and you ask a question?
So you know the game Jenga?
Yes.
I love that game for so many different activities, but we have it sometimes at our dinner table, or we used to. And everybody gets a pile of the blocks, and we take turns adding to the tower to build a conversation wall. And so, if somebody, like, I have one child in my family who has a harder time thinking of what to say, and another child who doesn't stop talking. And so that's where the talking stick comes in hand too, where you can, take turns with a visual and pass it to each other, but also the visual of, if somebody still has their pile of blocks and like, oh, Gabe didn't really contribute to the conversation, or we took over the conversation. Maybe we need to pause a little bit and let him have his turn to talk. You can also do this with, if you don't have a Jenga, or if you want to actually see it visually with colors, is just take pieces of colored paper, and everybody has a different colored, squares of paper. And then you can build a tower or a map on the table so that each person can add one for a comment or a question, or a bridging, maybe they're bridging the topic, whatever it might be. And then you can see it visually on the table as well. So you can get creative with it.
I love that tool because, I have that experience too, and it's difficult when, to drag conversation out of a person when someone else is talking a lot the whole time. So that's a great tool that we can share. Wow, it's just like so interesting to talk to you, and I'm just so happy for everything that you're doing. I know that you have a free gift that you are happy to give away. Would you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. So I mentioned the online course that I have with Rebecca Brandstetter it's called Make It Stick Parenting. And I've collaborated with an amazing organization called Generation Mindful, and they are helping get it out there to the world so we can continue creating all of these things. There's so much involved with sharing this work. So on my website, which is Make Social Learning Stick, if you go to parenting course, it'll pop you right over to a free mini 25-minute little overview of some strategies that you can use with your kids right away. So that's a free gift that I have. And then I also have on my website, just on the homepage of my website, is a download of a free 30-day calendar. So if you hop on over there, I have a couple of free goodies.
That's amazing. And the free calendar, what would you use that for? How would you use it?
It's a social emotional activity calendar. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. So there's 30 days of suggestions of activities that you can do with your kids to build social emotional learning in these everyday routines and activities. So everything from conversation to calming and connecting. I have a 12-month calendar actually, as well, that Generation Mindful has, that you can check out over there. You can get to that from my website as well too. But this is a free, just 30-day, the calendar that I have is theme-based. So every month is a different theme. So for the month of April, it's bonding and connection, and month of May is all about mindfulness. But the 30-day free calendar is just a sprinkling of all different ones.
I love that. So thank you so much for being here today. And I just love what you do and all the help that you're giving all the parents, but also their caretakers and the schools, and the difference that you make. So thank you for being here today, and thank you everyone.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.
Bye-bye.